There are questions that don't arrive as noise, but as a whisper, and sometimes it's that whisper that opens a small crack in the soul. So let me ask you, with the calm of someone lighting a small flame in the dark, what if the greatest teaching of Jesus isn't the one you think? And what if it's exactly the one you've been quietly ignoring without even noticing? The human mind is always chasing grand revelations, secrets hidden in the heavens, answers that shine like distant stars. But, ironically, it's in the simplest foundations, almost invisible, that true transformation rests. Simplicity, however, is uncomfortable. It demands honesty. It disarms us. Imagine, just for a moment, a silent place. No movement of the world, no urgency, no expectations. Just you, breathing, with an inner truth waiting to be heard. Jesus always pointed to this place, this secret territory where life reorganizes itself from the inside out. There is a teaching of his, gentle, deep, and ignored, that can realign the mind, calm the heart, and illuminate decisions. A teaching that doesn't promise instant miracles, but plants the seeds of lasting ones. A spiritual key many people step over while searching for big doors, not realizing that the true entrance has always been within. In this video, we'll walk together toward that sacred point. We'll reveal what this teaching is, understand its practical power, and see how it quietly changes everything around us. Not as a spiritual trick, but as a law built into life itself. Get ready. The mystery isn't far away. It's too close. So close that you may never have stopped to see it. From the earliest steps of humanity, we've carried an almost instinctive tendency to look outside for what can only be found inside. It's like trying to adjust the horizon when in reality, it's our gaze that's out of alignment. This is the oldest illusion, the most repeated, the most human, and at the same time, the most silent. Philosophers have seen this confusion for centuries. The Stoics taught that true freedom begins when we stop trying to control what is external and start governing what is internal. The Peripatetic school walked through gardens, reflecting on the harmony of the soul, not the turbulence of the world. Mystical traditions insisted everything deep lives behind the door of interiority, and yet we keep trying to push the world into the positions we'd like it to be. We try to change people, circumstances, paths, rhythms. We adjust schedules and routes, but rarely adjust our own awareness. It's like wanting to change the reflection without ever touching the mirror, and it's exactly here that Jesus appears as a master who never wasted words. He didn't fire up crowds with speeches focused on the outside. He directed their gaze toward an invisible, intimate, essential dimension. While everyone was asking for practical solutions, he offered something deeper, inner direction. While they asked for answers about the world, he spoke about the heart. The phrase that sums this up, and that many read but few truly hear, echoes as an eternal reminder: the kingdom is within you. Too simple for the ego to accept, too deep for a restless mind to embrace, too transformative to ignore, and yet it often is. Because the ego prefers complexity, it wants formulas, external paths, ways to rearrange the world like a puzzle. But Jesus pointed to the place almost no one wants to face for long, the inner silence where masks fall and truth appears. That's why this phrase goes unnoticed. It doesn't offer an easy path, it offers a true one. There comes a moment when every human search has to stop in front of a simple, almost disarming truth. The outer life is always a consequence of the inner world. This is the neglected teaching, the silent axis Jesus presented with gentle words but cosmic impact. Nothing truly changes on the outside if the inside remains confused, fragmented, misaligned. Jesus said this in different ways, always returning to the same point. Like someone who knows that when you strike a bell, its vibration spreads everywhere. He said, "You will know the tree by its fruit." No force is needed to understand, just observation. The fruit is not an accident. It grows from the root, from the inner state of the tree, from its silent health. In another moment, he reveals the same principle with sweetness and precision. The mouth speaks what the heart is full of. In other words, our words, decisions, Reactions and direction are only reflections of what is happening inside, within the hidden zones of the soul, in what we never show but always carry. And then comes the phrase that summarizes the spiritual architecture of the universe. Seek first the kingdom. First, not later. Not when you have time. Not when everything is finally solved. First. Because in divine order, the inner always comes before the outer. It's this way with a seed, with the sunrise, with love, with awareness. Everything true is born within before it appears outside. When you try to fix the outside without touching the inside, it's like rearranging the furniture in a house without noticing the foundation is crooked. It may look organized for a moment, but nothing lasts. Nothing holds. Life changes when you change. Relationships change when your heart learns to breathe. Decisions become clearer when the mind finds order, and the path becomes illuminated when the soul stops living in the dark. This is the central teaching, ignored because it doesn't promise shortcuts. It promises transformation, and true transformation is silent, deep, and inevitably internal. There was a person, with no name, no face, because it could be any one of us, who lived like someone constantly chasing their own reflection. Every morning they woke up with the feeling that the world was always one step ahead, always demanding more, always asking for something they still hadn't managed to give. It was as if they carried a silent storm inside their chest, yet only tried to clear the sky outside. They adjusted deadlines, changed paths, made endless lists, reorganized their schedule, and still the feeling of chaos remained. It wasn't traffic, it wasn't people, it wasn't circumstances, it was something subtler, a misalignment inside that they never stopped to see. As time went by, anxiety began creating urgency where there was none. Irritation appeared like a shadow. Emptiness settled in like a guest who arrives uninvited and refuses to leave. And the more they tried to fix things on the outside, the more they realized that nothing truly changed. One day, in the middle of yet another frantic, directionless rush, this person came across a phrase from Jesus, one of those that seems too simple to be deep, until it lands in the right place in the soul. Seek first the kingdom. The phrase didn't arrive like thunder. It came like a small cut in their mental routine, a cut that made them stop. For the first time in a long time, they noticed they had been looking in all the wrong places. The problem wasn't the world. The problem was the inner state they carried into the world. And in that almost imperceptible instant, the first transformation happened. Not because everything around them changed, but because they finally realized that true order begins where almost no one looks, in the heart. Aligning the inner world is not a harsh act, nor a tense effort. It is a return to the natural order of consciousness, like a river that, after detouring around rocks, finds its own bed again. Inner alignment is the harmony between mind, emotion, intention, and spirit. 4 dimensions that, when they breathe together, transform life in a quiet and inevitable way. Heraclitus said, "Everything flows." Plato said, "What's essential is invisible to ordinary eyes." Zen teaches that true clarity emerges when we stop trying to control every wave of the mind. And Jesus, with his gentle wisdom, showed that before any action, before any path, there is a sacred place within us that must be touched. He would withdraw into silence before major decisions, not to run away, but to align, to listen to the voice that doesn't shout, but guides. Each retreat was like tuning an inner instrument, for a misaligned heart produces noise, but a heart in order produces music. When you align your inner world, something subtle begins to happen. Clarity. Mental confusion dissolves like fog touched by light. Decisions take shape. Paths reveal themselves. Peace. Not the absence of problems, but the presence of depth. The serenity Jesus called the peace that surpasses understanding. Direction. It's as if an inner compass reorients itself towards spiritual north, guiding choices, words, and silences. Confidence. Not naive confidence, but a quiet certainty that there is order where there once was fear. Inner alignment is not abstract mysticism, it's practice, presence, coherence. It's realizing that when the heart finds its center, the world stops being a maze and becomes a path. If this teaching is so simple, why do so few people live it? Why does the inner world, this fundamental territory, remain so neglected? The answer lies in our own invisible obstacles. The first is the ego, that part of us that loves shortcuts, quick results, and external solutions. The ego is impatient. It wants the world fixed, not the heart organized. It prefers moving pieces on the board instead of moving itself. That's why it rejects Jesus' teaching. It's too simple, too direct, too deep for someone who's used to collecting ready-made answers. Then comes modern culture, an ocean of stimuli pushing us outward and almost never inward. We live connected, accelerated, scattered. The mind jumps from thought to thought like someone who can't sit still for even a minute. In this overload of noise, silence, which once was natural, has become almost threatening. And then there is the fear of the inner world, fear of facing thoughts we avoid, emotions we postpone, truths we try to hide. It's easier to run than to contemplate, easier to fill the silence than to enter it. Even the disciples of Jesus fell into this trap. They too sought practical answers. Lord, what should we do? What is the way? Who is the greatest? External questions, external expectations, external solutions. And Jesus, with a patience that crosses centuries, called them back to what is essential. He pointed to the heart while they looked at the world. He spoke of intention while they spoke of results. He taught transformation while they pursued advantage. The teaching was clear, but too deep to be grasped in a hurry, and that same rush is still alive inside us today. We ignore the teaching because it demands what we least want to give: time, silence, courage, and truth. But it's exactly this that makes the path so transformative. There is a power that doesn't show off, doesn't make noise, doesn't demand attention, a power that doesn't impose, it reveals. That power is silence. Jesus knew it deeply, not as the absence of sound, but as the presence of spirit, not as escape, but as foundation. For him, silence was the soil where consciousness aligns, the heart stabilizes, and truth appears without distortion. Scripture describes this again and again. He withdrew to deserted places. He walked alone at dawn. He prayed in silence before every major decision. While the crowd sought movement, Jesus sought stillness. While the world was restless, he dove into depth. This withdrawal was not just a habit, it was a principle. Because inner silence is where the ego's noise loses its strength, where the mind stops being a stormy sea and becomes a calm surface capable of reflecting light. Where intention is purified, truth appears and the soul breathes. The Stoics, centuries earlier, spoke of this as inner self-discipline, the idea that true strength lies not in controlling the world, but in governing one's own spirit. Jesus took this understanding to an even deeper level. He showed that silence aligns our being with divine order, with compassion, peace, and clarity. And it is this silence that makes inner alignment possible. Without it, awareness fragments. With it, everything finds its place. Silence is the fertile soil where inner life flourishes. It is there that roots grow strong, that decisions take shape, and that the soul learns to listen to what the world can never say. And when silence finds its place within us, the outside world stops being a battlefield and becomes a setting where we walk with more lightness, more presence, more truth. There comes a moment when wisdom can no longer be just contemplation. It must become a path, because no teaching truly transforms if it doesn't touch real life, daily routines, and the quiet choices that shape who we are. Inner alignment happens when awareness learns to breathe through three fundamental movements, three pillars that unite philosophy, spirituality, and the very essence of Jesus' teachings. Pillar 1. Observation. Observation is the first step, not fighting thoughts, but seeing them clearly. To observe is like turning on a flashlight in a room where we've always been stumbling. The light doesn't solve everything, but it shows where to put your feet. Jesus said, "Watch." Watching is not about watching the world, it's watching the heart. It's noticing when the mind has grown cloudy, when the ego tries to take over, when emotions start drifting without direction. Philosophy has taught this for centuries. Awareness is the beginning of all change. Without observing, we keep repeating old patterns in new clothes. To observe is to open inner space, to notice before reacting, to see before acting. It is the first step of awakening. Pillar 2. Intention. After observation comes intention, the silent axis that guides every action. Intention is like the wind steering a boat. Even if you don't notice it, it's what determines the course. Jesus offers us this key when he says, "My peace I give you." Peace is not just a feeling, it is an intention. It is choosing to act without urgency, without pressure, without the anxiety of everything all at once. It is deciding to live from an inner center, not from external demands. When intention is pure, light, honest, coherent, the path organizes itself. When intention is turbulent, rushed, reactive, confused, the path becomes distorted. Intention is the heart of action. It is the breath of the soul. Pillar 3. Surrender. The third pillar is the deepest. Surrender. Not as giving up, but as wisdom. Surrender is releasing excessive control, letting go of the impulse to force the world to fit our narrow plans. Jesus summed up this principle with the words, "Your will be done." It's not resignation. It is courage. Courage to trust in an order greater than the ego can understand. When you surrender, the heart relaxes. The mind expands. Life flows more naturally. Surrender is not passivity. It is alignment. It's acting with presence and wisdom, but without the rigidity of believing everything depends only on your own strength. These three pillars, observe, intend, and surrender, create the ground where inner alignment can flourish. They are simple practices, but deep, quiet, but transformative. And when applied sincerely, they begin to reorganize life from the inside out, just as Jesus always taught. He was someone who lived trying to control every detail of his life, every plan, every conversation, every outcome. He believed deeply that if he didn't hold everything in his own hands, everything would fall apart. And for a while, that illusion kept his routine going, until it didn't. The more he tried to control, the more life slipped through his fingers. Relationships wore down. Sleep became shorter. The mind never rested. His heart lived on high alert, as if crossing a minefield every single day. Then came the collapse. Not a visible, dramatic, loud collapse, but that quiet collapse when the soul says, "I can't keep doing this." In that moment, in that blow of truth, he remembered something he had heard long ago. A simple phrase that now finally found its way into his awareness. Seek first the kingdom. He decided to try, not because he felt strong, but because he had nothing left to lose. He began practicing observation. He noticed how his thoughts were already racing before he was fully awake. He saw how every small inconvenience created a storm inside him. Seeing this for the first time was already liberating. Then came intention. He decided, with a thin but sincere thread of honesty, to act more calmly, to speak less from urgency and more from presence, to respond instead of react. This small change cleared a space inside his soul, and finally, surrender. The hardest part, but also the most transformative. He stopped trying to control everything. He released the exaggerated effort. He allowed life to breathe with him. And then something unexpected happened. The problems didn't disappear, but they no longer dominated him. Relationships didn't become perfect, but they grew lighter. And slowly, he realized that life was beginning to organize itself, not because he finally managed to control everything, but because he was finally organized within. The transformation did not come from the world. It came from the inside, exactly as Jesus always said, and as he only now was able to truly understand. We live in an age that worships speed, shortcuts, and immediate results. Everything has to be fast, practical, measurable. And that's precisely why the teaching of Jesus, simple, deep, and inward, becomes almost invisible to modern eyes. Not because it's difficult, but because it demands a kind of transformation our culture no longer knows how to cultivate. Today's society prefers quick formulas to true processes. It wants methods that promise external change without touching the inner territory where everything really begins. It asks for ready-made answers, but rejects the silence that reveals the most important ones. Silence itself has become uncomfortable. People fill every second with stimuli, screens, notifications, noise. The world has never been so loud, and the heart never so distant from itself. In this environment, looking inward seems almost strange, out of place. Another reason is that most people seek results, not transformation. But Jesus never offered shortcuts. He offered a path, a process, a state of consciousness. While many asked, "Tell us what to do," he replied, "See who you need to become." And that difference is profound. Doing is immediate. Becoming is continuous. Doing requires effort. Becoming requires surrender. His teaching is ignored because it doesn't promise magic. It promises spiritual maturity. It doesn't offer escape. It offers depth. It doesn't cater to the ego. It speaks to the soul. And just like the disciples who walked beside Jesus, yet still sought external solutions, we get lost in the same distraction. We'd rather move the world than move the heart. That's why Jesus' most powerful teaching remains the most forgotten, because it requires responsibility, presence, and courage to step into our own interior, the place many people avoid for an entire lifetime. When the inner world finally comes into order, something extraordinary, and at the same time very simple, begins to happen. Life, which once felt heavy, confusing, and unpredictable, reorganizes itself like a river returning to its natural course. It's not magic, it's not coincidence, it's consequence. Inner alignment first changes what no one sees, the way you think, breathe, interpret, react. And when that changes, the world responds in harmony. Relationships become lighter, because when you're not carrying storms inside, you don't throw lightning on others. Your presence becomes softer, your words more careful, your gaze more understanding. Many conflicts disappear not because the other person has changed, but because your heart no longer reacts from fear or haste. Decisions become clearer. What once felt confusing starts to light up. Inner alignment works like dawn. It doesn't solve everything at once, but it reveals the path step by step. And with that comes the ability to choose what truly matters without so much hesitation. Anxiety decreases. Because anxiety is born from the disconnect between what we feel and what we think, between what we desire and what we fear. When the inner world is aligned, the mind stops running ahead of life. The body relaxes, breathing deepens, the soul finds rest. Productivity improves, not because you do more, but because you do better. With focus, with intention, with quality, a heart in alignment wastes less energy, less time, less life. And then comes the deepest impact, spiritual expansion, not as dogma, but as elevated awareness. As the Vedic wisdom says, the world changes when the observer changes. The Tao teaches that harmony is born within. Christian thought echoes the same truth. The renewing of the mind transforms the whole life. Everything converges on the same reality. When you organize yourself on the inside, the universe stops being an enemy and becomes an ally. Not because everything becomes perfect, but because you begin walking in tune with the invisible order that has always been there, waiting for your inner world to align. The impact is real, deep, inevitable, and it begins exactly where Jesus pointed, in the heart. When Jesus walked among people, many expected a leader who would transform the outer world, a political reformer, a social liberator, someone who would reorganize everything on the outside. But his revolution was more subtle and infinitely deeper. He did not come to change the world. He came to change the human interior. The kingdom Jesus spoke of was not a geographic place. It had no walls, no territories, no borders. It was, and still is, a living metaphor for a state of consciousness, a state where the heart aligns with peace, truth, and love, a state where life stops being governed by fear and starts being guided by inner clarity. The kingdom is not out there. It is not in the future. It is not in perfect circumstances. Jesus stated, with disarming simplicity, "The kingdom is within you." This is the revolution, the real one, the one so many ignore because it doesn't involve spectacle, but silence, not power but awareness, not recognition but depth. The inner kingdom is the place where masks fall, where the ego quiets down, where the human being rediscovers their own essence, that inner spark that has always existed, but is so often suffocated by the noise of life. When this kingdom awakens, everything begins to fall into harmony. Thoughts become clearer, emotions find rest, decisions gain wisdom, philosophy agrees. Ancient Eastern masters spoke of harmony between heaven and earth as an inner state. The Stoics taught that virtue is born from an aligned soul, and here Jesus reveals the synthesis. True transformation is internal, and everything external only reflects this movement. The kingdom is awakened awareness, deep presence, living connected to something greater than daily worries, seeing that peace doesn't come from perfect circumstances, but from an organized heart. When the inner kingdom blooms, the outer world stops being an enemy, life stops being a burden, the path stops being confusion. Everything finds its place because you have found yours. This was, and still is, the greatest spiritual innovation ever offered to humanity. Change doesn't begin with the world, it begins with the soul. After moving through silence, philosophy, stories, and spiritual depth, we finally arrive at the beating heart of Jesus' entire message, the point where everything converges, where every teaching lights up, where truth becomes simple, simple enough to transform an entire life. The phrase is known, repeated, quoted, but rarely understood. It contains the complete map of inner alignment, divine order, and deep transformation. Seek first the kingdom of God, and all these things will be added to you. This is more than spiritual advice. It is a law of consciousness, the foundation of inner life, the meeting point between philosophy, spirituality, and the natural movement of the universe. When Jesus says, "Seek first," he is not talking about time, but essence. It means putting the inner world in order before trying to fix the outer. It means remembering that the root comes before the fruit, the seed before the tree, the heart before the action. The kingdom is not a far-off place. It is the inner center where truth, serenity, and clarity live. It is the aligned state of consciousness that shapes the outer life. It is the point where the ego quiets down and the soul takes the lead. And when he says, "All these things will be added to you," he's not promising easy miracles. He's revealing a spiritual logic. When the inside is in order, the outside finds its place. When the mind aligns, the path lights up. When the heart breathes, life breathes with it. This phrase is powerful, but goes unnoticed because it's too simple. It doesn't talk about great achievements. It doesn't talk about shortcuts. It doesn't promise ease. It points to quiet work, to the courage to look within, to the spiritual maturity many avoid. That's why this teaching is ignored. It demands transformation, not appearance. Truth, not performance. Presence, not hurry. But for those who dare to live it, it reorganizes everything. Everything. Because Jesus did not just give us a phrase, he gave us a key, a door. An inner map that, when followed, makes life stop being a riddle and become a clear path. She was someone who carried the world on her shoulders, not by choice, but because she believed that if she didn't hold everything together, everything would fall apart. Living between expectations, fears, and obligations, she slowly forgot herself, like a flame still burning, but close to going out. Her days all looked the same, marked by a fatigue that didn't come from her body but from her soul. There were nights when she lay down but didn't rest, mornings when she woke up already exhausted, moments when her heart felt too small for so much weight. And quietly, she started to believe that this was just her life and that nothing would ever change. Until one day, an ordinary day with no special sign, she came across that teaching that had always been there, but that she had never truly seen. A simple phrase that seemed to whisper directly into the center of her awareness, "Seek first the kingdom." It touched something inside her, not just a passing emotion, but a deep memory. as if her soul recognized an ancient truth. For the first time in a long while, she stopped, breathed, and felt that she needed to look within, even if she didn't know how. At first, the silence scared her. It felt too wide, too deep, too honest. But little by little, she began to hear herself. She noticed unresolved fears, confused intentions, emotions she had left aside. And for the first time, she didn't run from them. She applied the teaching, not as a ritual, but as a return. She started with observation, then intention, and finally, surrender, letting go of what was never really hers to carry, reorganizing her heart with the care of someone holding something sacred. Then something changed, not suddenly, but quietly, like a sunrise no one notices until light fills everything. Her anxiety began to fade, her relationships grew lighter, her decisions became clearer, and over all of that, a deep peace began to spread, a peace she had never known before. It wasn't the absence of problems. It was the presence of awareness. It was the inner kingdom slowly blooming and transforming the outside without force. She looked at her own life and finally understood. The change she had always sought outside would only happen when change happened within. And in that moment, she knew she had found something no one could ever take away, the peace that is born from inner alignment. There are moments when life invites us to stop, to breathe, to look inward with the serenity of someone who realizes there is nothing more urgent than finding their own center. This is one of those moments. The teaching of Jesus, the one so many ignore because it's too simple for the ego and too deep for hurry, calls us now with the same gentleness as 2,000 years ago, a call that doesn't come from outside but echoes within, like a familiar sound that has always been there. He never pointed us toward grand temples, complex techniques, or elaborate rituals. He pointed us toward interiority, toward the kingdom hidden in silence, in breathing, in the present moment, toward the sacred space where the soul aligns, the mind rests, and the heart finds the truth it has always sought. The transformation you desire, whatever it may be, does not begin when the world changes. It begins when you change the way you see it, when you organize your thoughts, soften your emotions, purify your intentions. When you decide with quiet courage to walk inward instead of running outward. Jesus has always directed us to this invisible path, a path that doesn't depend on perfect circumstances or extraordinary strength, or someone telling you exactly what to do. It depends on presence, truth, and surrender. He invited us into the inner kingdom, where peace is not promised but lived, where clarity is not chased but revealed, where the soul stops reacting to the world and begins gently guiding it. So now I leave you with this deep reflection. The change you're seeking is waiting for you inside you, and every step toward your inner world is a step toward life in its fullest, most conscious, most authentic form. The kingdom is not far away. The kingdom is not hidden. The kingdom is where it has always been, in the silence of your own heart. Before we end this inner journey, I leave you with a simple question, one that carries a deep invitation, a mirror held up to your soul. Which area of your life most needs inner alignment today? If you'd like, share it in the comments. Sometimes just expressing it is enough for a new awareness to begin. And if this video touched your heart, make sure to like it, subscribe to the channel, and share this message with someone who needs to hear it. That way, more people can discover the transforming power of this teaching Jesus left us, silent, simple, and profoundly true.